Did I scare you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. But we're talking about death this week, and it's hard not to get a little frightened by the potential skellies that are going to pop out from whichever way. Listen, this week's episode of News Time is covering the Friday night death slots as well as dump months. Guys, those are two definitely non-sexual things that are going to go down, and I am both horny and afraid. So maybe you can call me horn-frayed, scorny. I don't know. What's going on? How do I get out of here? Help me. Where is it? Where's the door? Where's the light?
It's news time. Delivering to you the news you didn't know about, the news you didn't care about, and the news you didn't know you cared about. With host, Chad White. Now, here's that host, Chad White.
Want to see a magic trick? By the end of this episode, watch my dignity disappear. Welcome back to News Time. I'm your host, Chad White, and this is the comedy death news that you didn't know about. With the television season in full effect, it's time to take a look back at the ghosts of TV past. This next part might be easy for you. Simply remember the 90s. Think about the simpler times. Baggy clothing on rappers, video games were just turning 3D, and sexism in the workplace was still welcome. I kid. Sexism is still welcome. Thanks, Kavanaugh and Republican senators. All right, that's the last time we ever go current on the show. I can't really promise that. One of the worst parts about how 90s networks treated shows they didn't believe in is in their air times. If you didn't have a snowballs of a chance to have Steve Urkel appear on your program, then you got the shaft when it came to your air time and air date. Different strokes for different folks, you know? Look, we'll tackle programming blocks at another time, but the likes of TGIF, Must See TV, and the other blocks shaped how people watched TV for decades. There weren't any DVRs or streaming services. We had to catch it live or on a VHS tape that would eventually be recorded over with the last 40 minutes of a baseball game because it was the first tape I saw. I'm sorry, son. No, you're not Uncle Terry. Not even my real uncle. Just some guy sleeping with my mom. Eventually, in the 90s, the cornucopia of TGIF turned into a desolate wasteland of shows. Gone-worthy veteran shows, and subsequently, its tens of millions of viewers. 8 million may be good for a show now, but back then, shows were consistently getting upwards of 20 million viewers per week, and those were the bad episodes. But all good things must come to an end. In the late 90s, Friday night shows were doing worse, losing the battle for ratings thanks to distractions that weren't in the TV realm. Soon, this bled into the early aughts, and no show could survive airing on what was designated a weekend night. This wasn't just an ABC thing. Every broadcast network pretty much adheres to the death slot. If they don't believe in a show, to Friday night, the show goes. How's that for a slogan? The Alphabetic Network aired non-hit non-wonders such as the Ryan Reynolds starring Two Guys and a Girl or Reba McEntire's return to television in Malibu Country. There are two main differences between these shows. Two Guys and a Girl was moved from Wednesdays to Fridays following a decline in ratings in its fourth season, while Malibu Country initially aired on the day. For the former, it had solid ratings of between 10 million to 12 million viewers until the move, which was most likely to make room for another, more promising show. Whereas the latter was part of ABC's attempted resurgence of the TGIF brand, with the only negative thing about it not being ratings, but rather its reception. ABC had expanded the episode order by 5 after announcing the show as the highest-rated freshman sitcom of the season, after all. As you'll learn, the 90s and late 2000s differ with ratings in that back then it was all about retaining a large chunk of the audience, while now it's more about finding an audience and keeping them steady while hopefully adding a few more. NBC also had its share of Friday night failures, or what I call a typical date night for me. Not many shows aired on Fridays in the 80s and the 90s because the Peacock didn't greenlight as many, but the 10s have proven unfortuitous for them. High-profile shows like Undateable and Constantine were sent straight to hell. Even CBS failed to capture an audience on Fridays past a certain point, and it's the highest-rated network. The network hasn't canceled anything on that night since 2013. 2014, so they're at least faring better than the competition at this point. Fox 2 had its issues at the turn of the century with the death slot attribution meaning a lot to the network. Not only did it encompass shows that aired for a season or two, but it also had shows that lasted for just episodes, like the 2003 Luis Guzman sitcom that I did not know existed. Pre-sale Disney Fox wasn't afraid to shift shows mid-season either. Several shows made the leap during their runs, which always meant a swift ending was coming soon. Death slots aren't relegated to TV, though. Similar to how a show is aired at the most inopportune time due to lack of confidence, so too are movies given the shaft. There's a special time during the year when no movie is expected to make gangbusters, dubbed dump months. January and February are meant for Oscar hopefuls looking to fulfill their short theatrical runs, and movies starring actors in those Oscar hopefuls who were looking to make a quick buck, only to find out that both of their movies would be competing at the same juncture, while only one of them was really worth your time. Unlike Friday night death slots, there are exact reasons as to why movies are meant to fail during this time. Holiday weekends spent with family, weathers, Super Bowls, all of these account for low attendance in the movies. Not to mention everyone just wants to play with their Nintendos and Segas because those things are expensive. $100 for a cartridge, and I have to blow on it sometimes to make it work? Like the death slot, dump months have almost become a thing of the past, though. Movies can be released anytime digitally and on demand. Plus, if a movie is actually well received and able to find an audience, it'll do great at the box office no matter when it comes out. Take Clint Eastwood's American Sniper. It did well with both critics and audiences, netting $500 million at the box office. New Yorker contributor James Surowiecki suggested these seasonal dump months aren't fetch. He cited Universal, one of the heavy hitters in studios, as adopting a year-round release strategy. Movies like Ride Along, Identity Thief, and Safe House were successful in these months. Of course, they had some of the most recognized actors too. Universal's confidence in their movies allowed for other studios to test the waters. Now, tentpole movies aren't just meant for the summer and fall. We got Deadpool, Lego movies, and big horror franchises like It, proving past thinking wrong. Once meant for low-budget comedies and action vehicles, re-releases, and teen flicks, January and February have risen to May standards. That's a good tagline. As with the eradication of dump months, the death slot is no more. ABC aired really good Friday night shows like Happy Endings and Don't Trust the Bee, even if they were both canceled. The bastards. Shows like Last Man Standing thrive on Fridays. Shows like HBO's Animals and Vice live for live viewing or late streaming. CBS's reboots are thriving there. Peak TV and streaming have opened up a breadth of options, which in turn challenge networks to order more shows and get creative with their schedules. If a show is capable of capturing an audience, it'll do it. Networks and studios have learned to trust in their creators. Sure, it took a few years, but they finally did it. And that's all the news I have for you for this week on News Time. Why don't you subscribe and check out one of our other videos? Of course, you can always head to the website at cpluscomedy.com where some stuff is going down. You can follow us on Twitter at cpluscomedy. Follow me on Twitter at ChadBlackWhite. Like us on Facebook. Listen to the Constitutionals podcast alongside the Application podcast. And be sure, if you really want a job, force it down their ear with pipes.